Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson, and after a pretty extended hiatus, the Mailbag is making its triumphant return due to popular demand. A bunch of posters on the Inside the Red Raiders. Y'all said y'all wanted it back, so here we are. We have a ton of questions this week, so I'm going to dive right into them. I'm going to be succinct, but hopefully I answer your questions fully, or at least as close as I can get. But like I said, we have a lot of questions, so I'm going to dive right into them. All right, the first one comes from Texan44, who wants to know, he goes, how does Tyler Shucks' game, how does he translate into Sonny Cumbie's offense? And then how does some of the other skill players, figure to mesh with what Shuck did at Oregon and what Cumbie wants to do at Texas Tech? I think there are some similar things. Texan44 mentioned in his question, it's a lot of RPO, which, most of the offenses out there run a lot of RPO. And you see that a lot in the Big 12. I certainly think that's going to be a staple of this offense under Cumbie with Shuck. No matter who the quarterback is, but certainly with Tyler Shuck. I think they'll utilize the tight ends. They have some really good players now. They brought in, some young guys, Mason Tharp, Jed Castles, who look the part. They're big targets. But I think they're going to throw deep. I think you're going to see, the biggest difference, here's three big differences, all right? And I think some of it has to do with Shuck, and some of it just has to do with Cumbie. But first off, I think they're going to mesh well. I think Shuck is a great fit for Cumbie, which is one of the reasons why he came here, and one of the reasons why Cumbie wanted Shuck here. But here's three differences I think we're going to see from the offense. One, multiple formations. All right, you might see 5 wide. You might see 2 inside receivers in the game in the formation with that 5 wide. You might see 12 personnel, 21 personnel. You're going to see 2 backs, 2 tight ends. You're still going to see a lot of 11 personnel. It's just not going to be exclusive 11 personnel like we saw the last 99% of the time the last 2 seasons. And then I think you're going to see a lot of motion. Cumbie will utilize a lot of motion, a lot like Kingsbury did. Like the jet sweep, I believe, is going to be a staple. You'll see that at Texas Tech this upcoming season. And then, they're going to throw deep. They have these really big, fast receivers. And you just go down the list, whether, EZ is expected to be back. EZ is like 6'3", 215, and can run. And he's not the fastest guy. He's not the biggest guy. You have 6'6" Jerram Bradley, who looked great, the true freshman who was in the spring. I think Trey Cleveland's poised for a great season. Loic Fawanji, 6'4", and was a track star at Midland Lee. You go down the list. J.J. Spartman, I think, is going to be really, really good. He had a very good spring once he came back. So those are the three things I think they're going to translate well in terms of Shuck, his play, what he's done at Oregon with Cumbie's offense, and yes, I do think it will help the skill players. But you mentioned the tight ends and running backs. I think it may actually help the receiver because I think they're going to take some huge shots down the field. All right, the next question comes from OBX Raider. He asks, am I aware of any offensive line prospects that we should have an interest in, meaning Texas Tech? He says last time he looked in the portal, the ones that were there were pretty weak. Yeah, you're spot on in checking with some people around the program who know what's going on there. They're certainly in the market for at least one offensive lineman this offseason, between now and this upcoming season here in the fall, via the portal. But that guy, at least as of now, that's the thing about the portal is like just one day there's nobody there, then all of a sudden boom, somebody pops up who's a perfect fit. So as of recording this, or actually the day before recording this, they didn't really see anybody that they really liked. They're looking for somebody who's experienced, who can come and play right away, but also they want somebody who can move, I believe. Not just looking for some big dude to plug in or some guy who may not play. They're looking for a dude, an athletic dude. So we'll have to see, but it'll happen. The guy's just probably not there in the portal yet. DL Vet wants to know, is men basketball going to get a big man for this upcoming season's roster? Yeah, I do believe so. There's some guys that are... here, let me answer your question. Yes, I do. I think they're going to get 2. And then I'm going to go with the next question, which is going to expound on that answer and on your question, DL Vet. So I'm not just ignoring, but my answer is I believe they're going to get 2. All right, the next question is from Reckham Elvis. He says, who's most likely and least likely to head Texas Tech's way? Mohammed Sis, EJ Onu, and all right, I looked up the pronunciation guide because I would have never gotten this on my own. But Abayam Ola. Let's do that again. Abayam Ola, or as he likes to be called, or is known by, at least in America, as Bebe. So that's the dude, the 6'9" forward from Arkansas, of course, who played at Stetson under now Texas Tech assistant coach Corey Williams, who was at Arkansas. So, and he just recently hit the portal. So, what I'm going to say is most likely to end up at Texas Tech is Bebe, or Abayam Ola. I think he was the leading scorer, leading rebounder for Coach Williams at Stetson when Coach Williams was the head coach there. Then he went to Arkansas with Coach Williams. I do believe, and he sat out, so he could transfer, I believe, and he won't have to sit out. I think he's still eligible for that exemption. I'm gonna have to double check on that, but I believe that's correct. So, but I do think he ends up at Texas Tech. So that's the most likely, to answer your question. Least likely would be Mohammed Sis, the Memphis guy. I haven't really heard anything about that. I don't think he ends up at Texas Tech. And then you have EJ Onu, who's the NAIA star, but 6'11", he just dominated. I mean, let's face it, we're talking about him. He had to have dominated NAIA, but a lot of people are saying he has a future in the NBA. So if he has a future in the NBA, he can play in the Big 12. I'm going to have to see more to really believe it, but Tech is interested. They've reached out to him, so they're recruiting him. So I'm going to say he's second most likely to end up at Texas Tech out of those 3. And then in terms of who would help immediately, well, I think Sis would help immediately, either 1 or 2. And then I think all 3 of these guys. Like I think Bebe, he got hurt. He hadn't played as much at Arkansas, but he had a big game when he was at Stetson against Duke. And I think he's shown that he can do it against quality competition. It's just a matter of him putting it together. So, but then also EJ Onu, you got to wonder, like, is there going to be any kind of period in terms of him getting used to Division I and Big 12 basketball? I mean, are those big guys just going to push him around, or is he going to be able to battle with some of those bigs in the Big 12? So, that's a legitimate question, but the talent is undeniable, as is his size. And keeping with the big guy theme, Cindy Mahoney says, upvote for men's basketball bigs. Who is out there? Well, one guy I haven't mentioned yet who Texas is definitely interested in, and vice versa, is Bryson Williams, the transfer from UTEP, who, you would think he would follow his coach Rodney Terry to Texas, but I don't know. I mean, Texas is already starting to fill up the roster. They've landed some guys. Maybe like he knows he could come into Texas Tech and be that guy. Now, it's not just between those 2 schools. He's being recruited by several other, big-time programs. But you would think that Texas Tech would figure in the mix there and have a legitimate shot with Bryson Williams, because I think he would be one of your focal point players. I mean, he would start. I think he'd be a big-time addition. I really think that's a really nice fit. Now, we'll have to see if it works out that way, but he's definitely someone to continue to monitor. This is a good question from Teeny Pepper, who, he's funny, boy. I feel like he's either grand slam or strikeout with some of the things he says, which is all right, man. You make a big impact either way. So Teeny Pepper wants to know, he says, of all the new commits in basketball, who do I think will step up the most and have the largest impact next year? Well, that's a really good question, because all right, if you want me just to answer your question, then I'll say Davion Warren, because 20-plus point scorer, and not to mention all the other things he brings to the table, but the guy has scored 20 points a game. He's averaged for a season at the Division I level at Hampton. I mean, that's big time. He's a big time player. And you look at all the rankings. I think CBS had him ranked as the number 11 transfer guy in the portal this offseason, which for this offseason, he might have been like 7th or something in most years. So that was, he's a huge addition. But so from the scoring standpoint, I think him and Chandler Jacobs, right? But then, okay, Chandler Jacobs might be the guy who really brings it in terms of perimeter shooting, like what 44% or 45% or something from deep last season. So he might make the biggest impact there, while Warren overall scoring. But then you got to go KJ Allen. I mean, he's a guy, he might lead you in rebounding. He might have the dunks, that we're so accustomed to at Texas Tech, whether it be TJ Shan, Zach Smith, go down the list of all the great dunkers at Texas Tech. I think KJ Allen will keep that tradition going. I mean, he's known as a franchise. You watch his dunks, whether it be on Last Chance U or just his highlights, and they are fun to watch. So, that's exciting. But then you look at Adonis Arms, and if you consider versatility to be what you value the most, then he might make the biggest impact because he's a double-digit scorer. He's a facilitator. He might be your best defender out there. A 6'6" with long arms, a good rebounder. So I guess it depends on what you're looking for. The easy answer to me is Davion Warren, but then again, I don't know if that question is so easy to answer, which is what makes it such a good one, and why I'm feeling very optimistic about this team and this roster moving forward. All right, keeping with Texas Tech basketball, Panther Cat says to start the season he is going with the starting lineup of Clarence Nadolny, Chandler Jacobs, Kevin McCullough, Chibuzo Agbo, and Marcus Santasilva. Well, I'm going to agree with Santasilva. I'm going to agree with McCullough. And I'm going to agree with Chandler Jacobs. But I'm going to go with Davion Warren. I don't see how he doesn't start. And then I'm going to go with KJ Allen. I think you'll have Santasilva and KJ Allen. Because I think KJ Allen could do some things versatility-wise. And then I think you're going to have Adonis Arms coming off the bench. You're going to have Agbo coming off the bench. Some really good players, Clarence Nadolny. And I think if they really are going to run up tempo, if they really are going to run pressure, defense and full court pressure, some at least, if not a lot of the time, I mean, they're going to need a deep bench. They're going to have to substitute a lot. And I think you're seeing, I think they're building up that depth. They're doing a good job. You have to see. I mean, does McClung come back? Does TJ Shan come back? I don't know. We'll have to see. And who else are they going to add? I think at least a guard and two bigs. So it's going to be fun to see. All right, this is a good question. I think it cuts through a lot of stuff and get down to the nitty gritty. And I'm not sure that there's a clear answer yet. But Zebby09 says, are we all living in a Red Raider fantasy land to believe that Texas Tech got the much better deal with the transaction with the much despised Longhorns? First off, the coolest thing to me out of all this is that it's really just ramped up the rivalry with Texas. I think the older generation, I mean, you talk to them, whether it be I don't know, I'd say guys who went to school in the 80s, maybe early 90s, they really hate Texas. But a lot of the kids, they don't necessarily hate Texas, It was for me, my generation, man, we really hated A&M. I mean, that's who you go to games you're probably going to fight. You know what I mean? If you ran across the wrong Aggie, which, I mean, come on, how many right Aggies are there? But Texas, yes, there's a lot of juice there, but the hate wasn't really there necessarily. But it's there now, I think TCU is kind of figured in there because so much of the kids from that go to school now, or they go to school period at Texas Tech, have come from the Metroplex, and then with TCU being in the Big 12 and all that, so that's kind of been something. But now, I mean, Texas is public enemy number one. Chris Beard is public enemy number one. But to answer your question, Zebby, I'm not sure, because look, yes, he's despised. Yes, Chris Beard. I mean, I'll just put it this way: I haven't shared, and I'm not going to on the site, all the things that Beard did to bury the program, and he did. But it's obvious that, the way he left, how he left, the fact that he left to Texas from Texas Tech, all that stuff. I mean, I'm never gonna feel better about it. The more I know about it, the less I feel about him. But that doesn't mean he's not a great coach. He's a tremendous basketball coach, and that doesn't change. He did tremendous things at Texas Tech. I mean, come on. They were seconds away from the national championship. That whole Final Four experience, that run was amazing. That was piggybacking off an Elite Eight run, which was also amazing. I think Chris Beard is an amazing coach. He has his faults. I think we've seen some of those, several of them in the last couple of years. I do think there's a chance that he has, and I've said this before, both on the side and in private to a lot of people, that burnout could be a factor with him. The way I just don't see how he can continue up the pace. But we'll have to see about that. He may get rejuvenated in Austin. But I also like Mark Adams, and I do acknowledge the fact that a lot of what went into Chris Beard's success at Texas Tech was Mark Adams, Sean Sutton as well. So I think that question remains to be seen. We'll have to see. And I don't know if it'll be answered in one season, but it's going to be really fascinating, right, to see the two games. And just how each guy does. How does Mark Adams do with the promotion, Texas Tech getting his dream job? How does Coach Beard do with the different type of athlete he's going to get in Texas, and the different, very, very different type of culture in Austin that there is in Lubbock? So it's fascinating to me, and I'm not going to pretend like I know the answer to that, but I think it's a very valid question. I can't wait to see how all that's going to play out, Debbie. All right, final question comes from Two Poodles, who says, do I think Texas Tech can make it to Omaha this year? He says Texas Tech played tough, very tough against UT. They won that series. They won the first two games, dropped the third. He says, but it was obvious they didn't have 3 days worth of horsepower, with all the injuries. And it has been just, I'm not big on making excuses and all that. Injuries happen, but man, what a rash of injuries. It's been tough, and the bottom line is, for me, I think they have the bats, even with the injuries. I really do. And probably the defense. But I don't know if they have consistent enough pitching, with all the injuries they've had to the staff. And that's starters and in the pen. So, but if I could choose any coach in the country to figure it all out and get Texas Tech to Omaha yet again, which, golly, Tim Tadlock has made it look so easy. It's very difficult to get to Omaha, but he has made it look very easy at Texas Tech. But if I could choose anybody, it would be Tim Tadlock. I mean, the chess moves he's made in the past have been amazing, been very interesting to me. So I'm going to say no, I don't think they make it to Omaha. But look, I'm still not, because you're putting me on the spot. But am I counting out Tim Tadlock and this still very talented team? Absolutely not. So we shall see. But it's going to be very difficult due to those injuries, like you mentioned. So, hey, with that, I'm really glad, the mailbag has returned. All these wonderful questions. I look forward to, future mailbags and answering more of your questions. So with that, I want to thank you for watching, and until next time.